Okay. Welcome to the ICMCP Engaged webinar with today's Tech Talk on using a cyber range to learn how to hack and defend with our guest speaker, Jovonni Pharr of the Georgia Cyber Warfare Range. Before we get started, I'd just like to cover a couple of webinar rules, and that's to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the ICMCP webpage as soon as the recording is available. Also, all attendees are joined in listening mode only. Our guest speaker's talk will be followed by a Q&A session, so please post your questions in the chat session, which will be moderated by Christopher Cutts, our Director of Membership. And so, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Jovonni. Jovonni, take it away.
All right, awesome. So, pleasure to be here. Forgive my mask, there's no one around me, but you know, in the spirit of feeling like a ninja giving a talk about hacking, right? Let's you know, got to keep it on. So okay, so yeah, thanks for having us. We're pretty proud to be here. You guys are really doing some awesome stuff here at ICMCP. Let me can you guys see the sidebar here with video? I mean, with the videos. Okay, let me minimize that. See. Okay, we'll just put it there. Okay, cool. So yeah, so today's talk, we are the Georgia Cyber Warfare Range. My name is Jovonni. A little bit about me before we get into the agenda. So I've been in the STEM space for over 13 years now. I started off in software. Over time, that led me into hardware. So I have a background in microelectronics as well, low voltage stuff. Eventually, that led me into data science. I think I started off as a data scientist in 2013. And after that, I pretty much found my way into cybersecurity. I started off as a self-taught pen tester, maybe around like 2014 or so. And you know, I also have a background in startups, in the startup space too. I ran co-founded a startup here in Atlanta with me and my still mentor. We pretty much built a dev shop with all Black engineers here in Atlanta, and we grew it from just me and him to over 10 all Black engineers. Got celebrity clients, a bunch of press. If you Google my name, you'll find some stuff about that. It's called Neurocode. And the interesting part is that was before I went into the private industry. So I was in the startup space when I was still in college, getting my 2 undergraduate degrees. And I started my PhD in 2019. COVID kind of put that on hold a little bit, but started that at Georgia State. My PhD research topic is in privacy preserving computations. So that's basically merging the concept of distributed computing with pretty much if I wanted to compute some function between 2 people's data, how can I compute it but still not know what their data is, right? Sounds oxymoronic, but there's mathematical ways to pull it off. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay with the mask on. If it becomes a burden, just let me know. I'll take it off. And then in 2015, I graduated with my 2nd degree undergrad, and that was in computer information systems. My 1st degree is in finance. And then I went to work in private industry. So 2015, I went to work for a large insurance company here in America, but I went to Arizona to work there. And I started off in research and development. And in research and development, I was able to take all of my years of being a developer and focusing on innovation and focus with this huge corporate machine behind me, right? It's one thing to build innovative things from a small perspective, but then when you have a corporate machine around you, they add more resources to what you're doing. So did that for a few years. Then after that, I moved to the cybersecurity space within that organization to work as a data scientist, focusing on pretty much catching internal and external threats using machine learning, AI, some cool stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of like my corporate history, right? But overall engineer, right? Like probably a lot of people on the call. So yeah, pleasure to be here, like I said. So the agenda today is a few things. We want to talk about high level, what is the mission of a cyber range, right? We also want to talk about what does it take to make a cyber range. We also want to talk about how you use a cyber range. And we're trying to abstract this away from just the Georgia cyber warfare range, because there's ranges in the world, right? We're one of them. Um, and then we also want to talk about the community-driven learning aspect of it. And we'll kind of, the community-driven learning aspect will kind of be a theme throughout the presentation. And then at the end, we'll talk about some open source projects that we have out there that we also use here at the range. So one of the first missions, and this is not an exhaustive list, right? But one of the first missions of a cyber range is education, right? And I'll try to do my best to not read the slides, right? Because you guys can read. And this will be recorded so people can always go back and read, right? But from an education perspective, when you have an environment, and in this environment, you have a bunch of people who want to learn things, I think at the end of the day, you have to have an ecosystem that enables education. Because it's one thing for people to just teach each other, but there's several ways for you to enable education, right? And there's different types of education goals. Like a person there's some people in the industry who really just want to get their certifications up so that they can build competence from like a formal perspective and also get jobs with that, right? And that's a beneficial route. There's other people in the industry who don't care about certifications and they just want to build competence, right? And there's other people in the industry who actually don't ever plan to get a job in cybersecurity. They just want to learn how to hack things and break things and defend things. Then those people, sometimes they just want to defend their house, right? Because if you own any IP asset that's on the network, on the public internet, then you are a potential target, right? If you have a baby monitor that's connected or a IoT device, you are a potential target, even if you may not think of it that way. Even your connected refrigerator is a potential target if it's connected to the internet, right? So, you have to have a mission of education, right? And that's kind of self-explanatory. The second part is intelligence, right? So the concept of a cyber range is a lot bigger than just an ecosystem of, it's a lot bigger than just an ecosystem that enables people to learn. There also can be outputs from a cyber range, meaning that a cyber range can work with a school, a government entity, right? A three-letter organization. A cyber range can work with even a set few people, a private organization, right? And a lot of times with those type of relationships, the cyber range may output intelligence to that organization to help them do whatever their mission is, right? So for example, and we'll talk about the history of where our cyber range even comes from. But for example, you have cyber ranges who work with three-letter organizations, and those cyber ranges can move faster than the three-letter organizations. And so if there's a new threat out in the wild, that cyber range might take that threat and disassemble it in some way and provide information, right? So, and some of these acronyms, I actually didn't try to find out what the technical acumen is of the group. So I'll try to do my best to explain some of these acronyms, but I'm sure a lot of you know it. But TTPs, threats, tactics, procedures, right? OSINT, this is one that a lot of people don't know. Open source intelligence. Well, open source intelligence, it's pretty much how do you use LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, Pinterest, etc., to build a profile of a target, right? And kind of build intelligence based off open source information and tools, rather. So a third mission, and I only have an hour. This talk can easily be a day, so I'll try to, be a little speedy with it, but still take my time. The third mission of a cyber range is to change the cybersecurity industry. At the end of the day, we know that you have the amount of jobs in the cybersecurity space, and you have the amount of candidates in the cybersecurity space. Then you have the amount of qualified candidates, which is less than the amount of candidates in general. And let's just assume that every single candidate in the cybersecurity space is qualified, right? There's still a large gap between how many jobs you have and how much need, forget jobs, how much need you have in the cybersecurity space versus how many candidates you have. So a cyber range, another goal or mission is to help close that gap, but also evolve the cybersecurity industry from its current state and whatever that looks like, because it's an abstract concept, right? What does evolution mean, right? So, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So what is the GACWR, right? So at the end of the day, and we kind of build our range based on the range that we were involved with several years before we started, and we'll talk about what that was. So it's a high level, since we're in the talk. A few years ago, when I was working in research and development for my corporate employer, I volunteered for 2 years at the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range. And the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range, this introduced me to this concept of a cyber warfare range. Before that, I was already a self-taught pen tester for about 4 years or so. And when I got into that ecosystem, it showed me, wow, there's a free resource that a bunch of nerds come to on their own accord. None of them make money from it. They just come and get better at what they do, and they come and go as they please. And that really turned me on to, just the concept of a dedicated environment to do cool things. Let's just say it like that in an abstract way. But we are donation funded, right? We're privately owned. And we also are volunteer driven. And our core staff is, who kind of founded this thing on this side, but we have a lot of volunteers. At this point, we're almost up to 70 members, and we have volunteers that kind of help and learn as we go, right? And, the most important part, though, is that we're a no holds barred 24/7 remotely accessible range. And that's important because, people have different schedules, and if you have a cyber range that opens and closes 9 to 5, you miss out on a lot of opportunity there to teach people, right? So from a funding and affiliation perspective, we have zero funding from any US government, right? And that's a good thing in a lot of ways. But because of our relationship with the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range years ago, when I was coming back to Georgia, I pretty much, over those 2 years of volunteering there, I built a relationship with the people who run it and founded it. And so I told them almost 2 years in advance that, hey, when I go back to Georgia, I see a demand of a range needed there. And so it would be awesome to kind of partner with you guys and bring the same thing to Georgia. And so they were fully supportive of it, right? Never even blinked an eye at the idea. And so, but it took us years to get the space, right? And it also took us years to kind of be able to put the feet to the ground to actually start it. So, but now formally, the Georgia Cyber Warfare Range has a relationship with the National Cyber Warfare Foundation. And you can Google what that is, but it's a overarching organization. It's a nonprofit that has a bunch of resources, and we are a direct partner of them, and they don't have many partners, right? So we'll talk about why that's important. So this goes into our partnership with them. So our partnership with the National Cyber Warfare Foundation, it comes from our relationship with them over years, but then more importantly, what it gives our members is it gives our members a direct job pipeline, right? It also, I don't know if you guys know what an ISAO is, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But we have access to membership in their ISAO, and that's not the easiest thing to get. We also have supplemental training material that we get from them, in addition to the training material that we give our students and our members. But then more importantly, we are an active part of a global network of cyber ranges. And the reason why that's important is because cybersecurity is a collective game, right? You're not in cybersecurity for yourself. You rarely see APTs or advanced persistent threats act by themselves. Script kiddies may do that more so, and it's not like there's zero hackers in history who act by themselves. Like Kevin Mitnick might be a good example. There's people like that. But when it comes to real large scale cyber warfare, it's a team sport. Let's put it like that. And so we have the honor of being a part of a global network of cyber ranges, pretty much because of our relationship with the National Cyber Warfare Range. Okay, and this goes into what I was saying in the previous slide. What is an ISAO? An ISAO is an information sharing and analysis organization, and you can kind of look that up. But for example, let's say if the US government just got attacked by some nation state, the US government may not perform all of the work by themselves. The US government might rely on their partnerships with these type of organizations to say, hey, here's what we know about the nation state attack, help us. And so it's invaluable to be a part of those conversations, and that we get that because of our direct partnership with the National Cyber Warfare Range. So the vision to win at cyber warfare, right? It's our opinion as a group that we, the US, are losing the war on cyber. And I don't know if you know, but a lot of people think about World War III, but I think many more people don't really understand that World War III has been happening, and it's just not in front of your eyes, right? It's all in cyberspace. And there's attack maps on the internet. If you ever want to look at that, right, you can go look up the Norse attack map. I'm sure a lot of people on the call know about that, right? Now that's a small sliver of network requests going across the internet, right? But the point is, cyber warfare has been World War III has been happening. We're not winning at it. We're not dominating. So that creates an opportunity for us to do things. So the goal, though, is to learn how to do bad things in a controlled environment, right? And we could have put bad and good things, but the point is how do you learn how to actually do what the bad guys are doing? And how do you learn how to actually monitor what the bad guys are doing? That's the point. So why are we doing this? Like I said earlier, millions of cyber positions, not enough talent available. We agreed that the best way to fix this problem was to create a real environment for people to learn in, no simulations. Once you start simulating away from real world stuff, people start losing the authenticity, and they lose the opportunities to build competency, which is important. And also you have some logistics parts of there's no tax deductible path to get equipment donation of servers and stuff like that and racks, right? So also the flexibility that we have in our range, and this is not meant to be a sales pitch, but think about it. Even if you never use our range, any cyber range that you use should have these things baked in. Minus the authentication mechanism that we use, right? They should always have a continuum of ranges for different skill sets, right? So we offer that. We also offer custom ranges to be deployed, not only for special events, but if a partner has some type of environment that they want to harden or something like that, right? Success factors for cyber range, there's a typo in there, for a cyber range. Open environment for any skill set. This is important for a cyber range, especially this is the culture that we live by. We fully encourage pwnage, and I hope people on the call know what pwnage is. If you're on our network, if you can attack any asset on our network, we encourage that, because you're doing something constructive in a controlled environment and you're hardening our environment, right? Like I said, we're almost at 70 members. These 70 members are not experts in everything, right? Collectively, if we could somehow form a Voltron of some type, or a Megazord, if you watch Power Rangers, then we could probably be experts at everything, right? But that's not the goal. The goal isn't to be experts at everything. The goal is to create a community where everybody can learn together. So we also take open source projects and that are out there, like Broken Web App and stuff like that, and deploy them for our members. But we also make open source software, which we'll talk about later. And that's where the in-house developed tooling comes into play, because our founding team, we're all engineers at the end of the day. So we like building tools, and our partners at the National Cyber Warfare Range are also hardcore engineers. So that helps. Like I said, we were for-profit before, but we're moving to a nonprofit. And at the bottom here, it says pretty much our partnership with the National Cyber Warfare Range. So yeah. Okay, so let's get closer to the meat of it. See how we get up to, okay, 20 minutes, cool. So cyber warfare is a tool used by religious, political, terrorist, criminal syndicates, right? Let me move this out the way. I don't know if move this out the way. So we see cyber warfare already. No country is immune. You'll be surprised as to how many smaller countries that you probably never heard of are actually engaging in offensive efforts, I guess you can say. I think you can assume every country that has cyber infrastructure is engaging in at least defensive, but you will be surprised as to how many are engaging in military-based offensive things. Oops. So capable cybersecurity is a survival skill. Sorry, it is survival, right? Because like I said, if World War III is happening in cyberspace, you start to draw the parallel between what is required to fight on a real battlefield versus what's required to fight in a cyber space, right? Man, what is up with this thing here? How do I hide this thing? Maybe you guys can't see this toolbar. I don't know. Can you guys see this toolbar at all at the top here? It's kind of in the way. Okay, never mind. I'll just assume that you guys, whatever. We'll just keep going. So how will you compete, right? As an organization, as a person, right? Because like I said, if you have a connected refrigerator, you are a potential target, right? So if you're in cybersecurity, you at least want to protect your house because data theft is a thing, right? Identity theft is a thing, right? And there's so many examples of people hacking baby monitors and turning them off. Or people, if you want to go look at some cool stuff, look up the term Shodan on the internet, SHODAN. Just look that up. Have some fun with that. That'll show you why you need to pay attention to it yourself. Forget working for a company. This is important though. Capable cyber warriors make your country safer. Because like I said, back in the day, you had soldiers who are on beaches, right? But now you have soldiers who are at computers. And the parallel between those starts to be an interesting conversation. Let's just put it that way. But building a defense of your country's internet connected people, businesses, government, and installations becomes important. Even if you don't even focus on national critical infrastructure, just focusing on the people and the businesses. Forget the government installations. Just focusing on those two, it becomes a well worth it mission. Safeguarding commerce, right? We saw the Colonial hack recently, and all of these gas stations ran out of gas, right? And so, a lot of people weren't even like, you would see people pull up to gas stations and they wouldn't see any gas and they wouldn't even go in, right? So when you think about a gas station, like chips and drinks and gum and stuff like that becomes an upsell a lot of times, because you go to the gas station many times to get gas and you stop and you go pay for the gas, then you see some M&Ms, you're like, oh, let me buy these. So actually attacking something as basic and necessary as gas can have a profound effect on commerce with the businesses, right? So, and you got a lot of you people on the call understand this stuff, right? And so let me kind of speed through this a little bit. But one part is transforming lives, right? I can't tell you how many times, both being a member of the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range and just being in this space, where we see people go from being a cashier at Macy's, and then 1 year later they're a security analyst for an organization. Like even one of our founding members, right? He went from working in construction, right, and crushing it in construction, doing like physical, electrical stuff, building decks, right? And he made the decision to go into security, and then like a year later, 2 years later, his whole career path is changed, right? And didn't have to go to school or anything like that, just by focusing on gaining skills. And so it can transform people's lives. So that's why I kind of have this picture here of this guy bored at work at his computer, because it can actually change your life. And, not to mention, I'm sure the people on this call agree with this, cybersecurity is one of the most fun spaces, period, in my opinion. But here we have empowering your people, right? when you're building a cyber range, you have this concept of we're in it together. Because we all live in America, even if no matter what you feel about the American government, and I look like you guys, so I get it. But no matter what you think about it, we're still under the same umbrella. Someone hacked Colonial, right? And I couldn't get gas. So even no matter what I think about the government, right, it has a really local effect on me. So we are in it together, no matter what way you slice it, and that's important to think about. Because if you keep that concept in mind, ecosystems for you to learn together become even more obvious. So what does it take to build a cyber range? Well, let's get into some cool stuff. And so what we're going to do is kind of tie in how we got here. So note, this is something you should keep in mind. A lab, a security lab, is not a cyber range. It is not a cyber range. Think about this. When you go to a gun range, right, you could easily go set up some targets in your backyard. And yeah, you might have a gun range, right? You might have some targets up, but there's a difference between an organized gun range and a target in your backyard. Because at a gun range, I can go learn. If I hold my gun at the gun range and I drop it, or I load it wrong, right, or it jams, there's somebody right there with headphones on who's gonna be like, oh, wait, let me show you. Look, here's why it jammed. Here you go, boom, there you go, now shoot, right? That one little interaction is so invaluable. Whereas you fumbling around in your backyard, which still may make you a marksman, but it's still a different method of learning. And so a lab is not a range. Success for a range requires the right combination of technology, people, and culture. You can have the guns, no people, no culture. You just have some targets in your backyard. You can have the people, no technology, no culture. You just have a bunch of nerdy people who are interested in shooting. You can have the culture, no people, no technology. Now you're just excited to learn something by yourself, right? So there's a combination that is required to actually make a cyber range. So here's how we got here. We built a relationship over the years of working with the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range. When we put the feet on the ground to actually make the cyber range, we seeked out donations, right? And these donations, I think at the end of the day, we total over $20,000 of donations, and we'll kind of see what the donations are. But what's focused is on the servers, right? So we have a range of servers, right? From Dell's to other brands, right? All the type of servers that you would see in an enterprise grade data center. And the interesting part is these donations come from, at the end of the day, these donations really come from things like decommissioned data centers. Because, data centers are businesses. Sometimes you have data centers that stand up to be profitable and become a huge data center, and they just fail as a business. And then they got to liquidate their assets. So if you do it right, you can find these decommissioned data centers that have assets to liquidate, and you just take them off their hands. But you could buy these online, right? For some of these may cost $1,000, some of these may cost $300, right? It's just about knowing what to get, right? But that's where relationships come into play. So that you don't have to, even though we've been in this space for years, you at least have a network of people and organizations that you can reach out to figure out what you need to buy. So have a bunch of servers, right? Different brands, right? And so after you get the donations, though, that's just servers. We also have over a petabyte of storage, right? So we have enough drive space to pretty much store probably every single, if you took every single Black technology company in America and you just took their static website, we have enough storage space to store all of these Black tech companies' websites, right? But the point is to kind of draw some real world example of how much space you have. And we have years of hard drives just to do cyber work. We have years of hard drives. And it's not cheap, right? So, and note, we have enough storage space and compute resources to become a full hosting company if we ever wanted to, right? Let's say if we said one day we want to forget the cyber range mission, let's become GoDaddy, right? We have a nice foot forward to do that. Let's say if we wanted to be Spotify, we have a nice foot forward to do that. We have enough resources to power a small country cyber program. And that's something to be proud of. You have a lot of countries in Africa that don't have these type of programs, right? Or may not have a large one, right? And at the same token, you have enough resources to power a small country cyber program, but also enough resources to attack a small country, right? But the learning here is that it doesn't take much. It does not take much to build up this type of compute resources. You could do it in your house. You just have to know what you got to do. Also, building a cyber range requires many of the same skills and resources needed to build your own cloud provider, like AWS. I don't know if you've ever been to a real data center out there, like a Facebook data center or something like that, but this is the type of machines they have in there, right? And this is just servers and hard drives, right? So let's get to racks now. So like I said, this stuff comes from decommissioned data centers pretty much. There's a logistics component to getting the racks to you, right? So shipping these racks does not cost $10, right? So, this is the picture of us shipping the racks from their origin to us, right? And kind of see them being stacked up, right? And what we did is we pretty much made a culture out of taking one man's trash and turning it into the range's treasure, right? Because like I said, you have probably over $30,000 of equipment here, but they were not being used, right? They were just waiting to be used or waiting to be sold. And the skill set is to seek those out and try to get your hands on it. So we got servers shipped in crates, right? We had to do the logistics aspect of getting the range to us, right? And if you're watching this recording later, just kind of look at the weight down there of just a few racks. They're not light. So when we get them, here's what the racks look like. They look like trash, right, to the untrained eye. But if you can see beneath the visible part, there's treasure under here, right? Because we talk about the mission of a cyber range, right? So here's what they look like. We spent some time as a founding team cleaning these racks, like deep cleaning these racks. It was actually pretty fun. So here's like a nest shot. We have cameras in our range. Here's one of the nest shots of us cleaning. Then let me see. Okay, we're good on time. Then we have so here's what they end up looking like when you clean them, right? Good stuff. So then we move to actually racking the servers. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with racks, but racks have a certain type of measurement called a rack unit, right? So you ever heard the term 1U, 2U, 4U? We pretty much focus on 0 to 2U gaps between our servers. Here's a picture of me and another founding member racking a few. So then the next step, and this is all how to build your own range, where you can do this yourself if you just have the will to do it. Then we get to server administration. So if we have almost 30 servers, now you have to go through and provision each of these servers. And unfortunately, if you just have servers from the wild, there's no way to just go through and automate all of that, right? So there is a level of know-how to have to do this stuff, right? So here's some pictures of us having to actually administrate these servers, right? So we take instances of images, right? And then we kind of put them on all these servers and provision networks and all that type of fun stuff. That's a whole talk by itself, which we have courses that we made just for our members to learn how to do this themselves. Because like I said, we want to teach you how to make your own range if you ever want to. So now we move to using a cyber range. So there are several cloud cyber ranges out there, none of which provide you with access to the underlying hardware. A lot of it is virtualization, but you can't go to these ranges and learn how to pretty much learn how to provision a server yourself, learn how to rack a server yourself, learn how to troubleshoot setting up the server's OS. You can't do this in these environments, and all of which provide you with self-guided curriculum and no direct mentorship in real time. At best, a lot of these cloud ranges, what they do is they give you forums where you can go post a comment, other people can go comment on it, and you can learn like that. But that's a little different than you being at a gun range and the gun jam, and someone's like, "Oh no, wait, let me show you. You gotta boom, boom, boom," right? It's a little different. So whatever cloud range you use, though, the benefits to you should be clear, right? It should be very clear. You shouldn't feel like you're just paying for a product and you're just figuring things out, right? So here's how our members authenticate to our range. We have an SMS gateway. That SMS gateway talks to an SMS server here at the range. That SMS server talks to our ops server. And it pretty much provisions your environment on demand, right? And we give you a user interface, and we'll kind of show you what that looks like a little bit. But the point is, we merge, and this is actually something that we learned from the National Cyber Warfare Range on how they authenticate their users. And so what we did when we first started is we built our local version of this, and now we're integrating it with their global version of this. So it's going to work the same way. But the point is, we're merging multi-factor authentication with your day-to-day access at the range. And I'm sure people on the call understand the benefit of multi-factor authentication, right? It's hard for someone to pretend to have your phone, but it's not impossible, right? So user experience while engaging at the range. So when you provision an environment for yourself, we give you a jump box. That jump box has firewall rules that get you directly to your VM, your environment, and your environment can exist in multiple VMs. But from a basic perspective, that jump box is something you can just access in the browser. And now it gives you direct SSH access to your environment that only you have, or it gives you like a GUI, like an actual VNC connection, remote desktop type stuff for you to actually move a mouse and point and click. But we try to teach people hands-on terminal stuff first, right? But all of our jump boxes come from our container registries, right? We have some basic database that kind of manages state, et cetera. So one thing that we try to focus on is the basic fundamentals. So I'm curious, and I can't see the chat, but ask yourself, what is the common denominator in all of these pictures? I'll give you 5 seconds while I check time. Okay, got 5. Okay, cool. Ask yourself that. We might run over. I'll try to speed through, but we might run over 45. So ask yourself, what is the common denominator in all of these pictures? It's not the hoodie, right? It's the terminal. It's the terminal. So we like our students and members to know how to jump on a terminal in any OS and move around. There's a reason why in movies, hackers always have a terminal up. It's not because it looks cool. That's kind of right. But, there's a reason why. So let's talk about community-driven learning a little bit, right? So these are pictures from the ranges in Arizona and what we emulate here. We have several people here, and there's this concept of organic mentoring where, just like I said, if you're at a gun range, sometimes your gun might jam and the instructor might be helping someone else at that time. But the person to the stall next to you might help you out randomly because they see you have an issue, because y'all are peers at this point. And it doesn't happen all the time, but you guys would be peers at this in the stalls, right? And that concept is so invaluable because that means that it's a propagating concept of mentoring that goes throughout the ecosystem. And it's not just from the people who founded the organization onto the members, it's member to member mentoring. And that's important because then you raise up a mentor and then they start mentoring other people. And there's different levels to skill sets. So everybody can mentor everybody in some way on something. So that's important though for a range. And you don't get that with cloud ranges though. Of in-person range or dedicated range environment is important for that. Like I said, we wanted to focus on live fire environments, and that's the same way the National Cyber Warfare Range does it as well. Because at the end of the day, you want to teach people what's happening now. And so we have ranges directly positioned to be attacked by actors or threats in the wild. We use these environments to teach real-world defense and monitoring strategies. And so this is something, when the Colonial hack happened, we were able to find the variant, right? And just from other security researchers in the ecosystem, we were able to find a variant and study it ourselves, right? We wanted to study how the hackers actually pulled this off and what their TTPs looked like, right? What did the IOCs look like for what they were doing, right? And that's important because if you abstract this out, it means if something happens in the real world, we may be able to move faster than the government can in pulling a live sample of what's going on and studying it with our members. Therefore, the benefit becomes twofold, where you're teaching your members something that's happening now and you're analyzing it together, but your findings you can give to the entity that you work with, right? And there's several examples of the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range finding things that the government and their well-trained experts or well-paid experts basically said, oh, that's nothing, right? No, you don't have to look at that. That's nothing. And in the Arizona cyber warfare range is like, well, actually, this looks like something, and it ends up being something, right? They found many variants before everybody else did doing it that way because of the community, and that's why it's important. It's like an emergent property of having a community. So modes of engagement, very simple. We have self-guided versus directed, and any cyber range that you use should have both. These cloud ranges are self-guided. They give you tutorials and videos and stuff, but directed is where someone can show you how to hold the gun in real time and work with you specifically. So that's important for any range that you use. So some technical challenges with making a range, right? One thing is supporting infrastructure designed to be destroyed at worst case. Like I said, we encourage pwnage. So best case and worst case is we have a member who's just so much better than everybody else, and they find some holes in what we're doing, and they literally take down everything. That'll be a win for the range, though, you see? But it might be a loss from an operations perspective, but that's where our disaster recovery plans come into play, right? And us being able to spin up our environment quickly, right? So, we plan for stuff like that, but we want that because that person then shows that they should be mentoring a bunch of people, right? It's this constant theme of community and learning and being good at what we do, because we want to train you to be as good as them, as the enemy, so that you yourself can defend as well as the enemy can attack. So this is, at the end of the day, it's red team versus blue team, right? And this concept of rock'em sock'em robots is pretty straightforward. But it's red team versus blue team, purple teaming if you want to think about it, but we try to teach both. So here's a few open source projects that we have really shortly. I have 2 minutes, but we actively publish our own tools that we use in our range, and we're publishing. We have more that we're publishing. So the first thing that we published, this was in 2017. The work started in 2016. And if you look at this paper, this is sponsored by the Arizona Cyber Warfare Range. So this was in my heyday at that range. And so this kind of gave birth to a lot of what we're doing here. So we had the idea to do a range for several years, but it takes years to pull it off. So here, what it is just a game engine, right? You can go look this up on YouTube, GitHub if you want. It's a game engine where it's making a game engine for you to build hacker-based games on top of it, right? So it's kind of abstracting away. Think of it like a Unity or Unreal Engine, but for hacking, right? So we actually use this in a subsequent game that we're working on now called Hack Wars, where we're pretty much making like an RPG hacker game based on real world hacking, right? So it's interesting stuff, more on that soon, but there's a paper out there if you want to read it. It's about 31 pages or something. Here's another one. Here's our most popular project. If you see there at the bottom, we have 144 stars on GitHub as of yesterday. We also have 76 forks as of yesterday. This project actually became so popular that we had to kind of pull back publishing the enhancements that we made to it, because we wanted to really plan how we take the ecosystem. It's one thing to launch an open source tool, but it's another thing to strategize where you want that ecosystem to go, right? And so there's another paper you guys can look up. This is called OpenUBA. This project pretty much solves an issue of being able to apply advanced AI and data science models to computational environments like Hadoop and Elasticsearch. And what it's doing is just pretty much building on top of the scientific community, taking things like TensorFlow, scikit-learn, et cetera, and allowing you to build models, but then deploy them onto your data sets that exist in Hadoop and Elasticsearch. But once we published this, it kind of caught fire. I don't know if any of you ever launched a project on GitHub, but it's pretty hard to get 100 stars, let alone 144, and we're still growing. So if you look at it, just know there are enhancements that we just haven't made public because there's so many forks to this. There's actually companies on the planet who are launching their startup on top of this open source project. And that's something that we're really proud of. But finally for this, we actually use this to monitor all the behavior within the range, which is good because we use what do they say? We use what we built. Let's put it like that. So key takeaways, high level, real quick. A security lab is not a cyber range. real hardware equals real experience. That equals real jobs. Like I said, there's people who actually want to get jobs. We all like money. We focus on competence over certifications, even though having both is good. But I was in a PhD program. I met a lot of people who have PhDs and can't PhDs in computer science and can't write a lick of code. So like qualifications is one thing, but competency is way better. And my mentor, Rasta, he always used to teach me competency is king. If you're competent, no one can take that away from you. Practice organic mentoring. We try to preach that a lot. Make a difference in the cybersecurity space. We are losing the cyber war. The time to act is now. And lastly, we are in this together. So let's act like we are in it together. And so last thing I want, and we can start actually taking questions now, but last thing I want to do is show you. So for our members, here's what you see when you want to actually use the range. And I see some people are actually liking the GitHub project as we speak. So that's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do here is so like I said, this works off SMS, right? So I'm going to, you see my IP address at the top. I'm going to pretty much authenticate to the system, and I'm going to enroll in the beginner range, right? So all that happens through multi-factor authentication on your phone. Let's see. Oh, sorry, wrong IP. Boom. Here we go. Okay, so I'm enrolling. Pretty simple, 2 text messages. So now when I reload, now I see I'm in the beginner range, right? So this list of environments, it actually changes over time. We'll add more, right? We have a bunch of VMs and stuff that we still have yet to enable for people, but we give them base installs of things that they can work from. And we also have higher ranges that you need approval to actually get access to. But you come in here, you click this launch button, it takes a little bit. But what this is doing is it's provisioning a VM for you on the background. It's spinning it up for you, but then it's also creating a jump box for you as well. And let me make sure the server's acting right. Yeah, so then it's also, yeah, here we go. Yep. So then it's also creating a jump box for you that's gonna give you direct and protected connection to your environment. And from there, you can do your work, right? You can try to hack things, etc. So the games that we're building on top of this stuff too will allow you to hack every other user that's in the game, or give you conditional hacking opportunities based on some game logic, right? So after a while, this will pretty much load up your environment. And I think we could actually start taking questions, right? Because this is just a straightforward demo part of it. Yeah, give it a minute. It's just spin up.
Cool beans. Hey, Jovonni. One of the first questions is from Nora Ashanti. She saying thank you for your intuition and your time. She really appreciates the information that you provided.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, sir. Jaden Wedner, I'm sorry. He said he's the question he's asking is why is it beneficial for there to be zero funding for U.S. entities?
Why is it beneficial to be? Oh, gotcha. Funding comes, okay. It's hard to show a time. Oh, here it goes. So your stuff opened up, right? So I'll click this while I answer this question. So if I click on that, it gives me a terminal in the browser. Now I'm directly into my machine. I can do whatever the H I want to do now. Thank you to the demo gods. But when you have funding, when you take funding, think about it from a street way, right? I hate making like drug dealing analogies, but they tend to be fun to say. If I have a connect and he gives me and he fronts me some money, that comes with some stipulations. If the government gives you, if any organization gives you money, it's seldomly the case that it's no strings attached, right? So I think it's good to have, like, grants are cool, but even with grants, you have some concept of like a timeline. You got to try to fit this mission, right? So it's all about how you do it. I think that saying purely zero funding is, or saying purely that funding from a government is bad, that's a misnomer. But at the end of the day, funding comes with strings. And you have to be careful with those strings if you really want to be beneficial to the ecosystem itself. Because the last thing you want to do is accept funding from an organization, and the U.S. government is the biggest organization in the country. The last thing you want to do is accept funding from an organization that hinders your goal, of trying to help. Because imagine you getting funding from the government, and now if there's a malware variant that breaks loose, now the government says, hey, it's too dangerous for you to release what you learned to the public. Now it actually hinders, that can become a national security issue, where all of the security research in the country, all the security researchers in the country, you may not be able to share your findings with them now because the government said so, because they gave you money, right? So it's a tricky thing, and you want to make sure to not get into them situations. But we're an example, and so is the National Cyber Warfare Range, of you can take money from any entity in the right way. You just have to watch out for those strings attached. And I hope that that helps answer that question a little bit, at least.
Nice. We have a question from Christopher Joseph. The question is, he is looking to joining your actual organization, and what are the requirements to join?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the requirements to join is you want to join. You know, we try to remain inclusive, right? And we are the only Black-owned cyber range in America, possibly the world, but we're not just for people who look like us, right? Because we don't want to be discriminatory in our own sense, right? We are for practitioners, beginners, noobs, advanced people. And so we try to be all inclusive in that regard. So the only requirement to join is to just sign up. Go to GACWR.org or just Google Georgia Cyber Warfare Range and just sign up, and then you'll get added to our list of members. Like I said, we're at 70 now, and there's many members we haven't even met with, right? So in the next few weeks, we'll do like a kickoff session with new members. But yeah, like we try to be all inclusive to anyone who wants to join. Another thing we didn't talk about too is, and you could bring up the next question too.
Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Cool beans. So we have a question from Ahmed. The question is, what is the best way to limit cyber warfare?
Kill connection to the internet. It's like saying, how do you limit Bitcoin? Kill connections to the internet, right? And even then, if you have a local area network, you just have a bunch of Bitcoin nodes, right? You can do some stuff. But even if you had a wide local area network, there could still be cyber warfare going back and forth, because many people on the call know you don't need internet to make a network request if you're on a network, right? So hopefully that answers that. But another thing is, we actually have K through 12 programs as well for kids, and we give them Raspberry Pis, and we use this to help them build their way up to actual servers that we have in our range. And so that actually helps. That helps a lot, pretty much, is what I'm saying. I forgot to mention that, but the kids love what we do in that regards. They see it as little toys. But next question, go ahead. And hopefully that answered your question, sir.
Awesome. The next question, how are you able to simulate real world environments that are being hacked out there, and what are some environments? I'm sorry, and what are the environments in terms of scale and diversity?
Yeah, good question. So, it's easy if we want to set up an LDAP environment, right? We already have done that, right? So, when you see hacks go on, it's important to read the security researchers' analysis of that, so then you'll see what environment was hacked. It's nothing for us to set up the environment, but a lot of times we partner with organizations that give us the environments to set up. So one thing that we offer as well, and we learned this from the National Cyber Warfare Range, is that our volunteers who want to do red team stuff, we provide free services to small organizations who need red team exercises, and we use our volunteers to hack the stuff for the client, and the client installs it at our range, or we install it for the client. And now we use these volunteers to pretty much learn how to hack on that live target, but a combination of us installing it and clients giving it to us as well, that help us actually emulate real world environments. Hopefully that helps answer that. And anybody else who has questions as we go, feel free to tweet us or tweet me or anything. I can answer more if we run out of time. But go ahead.
Gotcha. One last question. Joshua is outside of the U.S. He wants to know, is he able to enroll into the course if they're outside internationally? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. And we don't have one course, right? We're a cyber range that we build courses over time, right? And you don't ever even have to attend a course that we're doing to use the range. That whole thing that I just walked through with you right now to set up my own environment, any member can set up their own environment that way. And so, you could be anywhere on the planet, and, because we monitor everything through tools, right? So you could be anywhere on the planet and join. We actually have a few people in Kenya who have joined. So, yeah, you can join from anywhere.
Nice. One last question, referring referring to the no government funding. Has the organization entered into a research agreement with any government agency?
It's
And if it's
interesting
the same?
because yeah, good point. So you're probably talking about the SDIRs, I think they're called. I forgot what it stands for. But there's a lot of innovation-based opportunities with the government, and we are looking into those. And many times, for some of them, you have to be nonprofit. Some of them, they don't really care, but we are looking at that. But it's more so about the strings attached, right? And a lot of work that we do, we are very much qualified for it. So we are looking at that. But we don't. The cool thing is we don't necessarily need funding right now. Like we have what we need, where we can support ourselves the way that we're doing it now. So we don't need funding, but we have a growth strategy that is going to require some funding, but we don't even have to touch that for years to come, and we could still hit our mission on point, right? So that's not saying that we're never looking for funding, right? But we did it this way on purpose, and that's why it took years to get to this point, because we wanted to do it right, not do it quickly, right? We didn't want to become a situation where if we run out of funding in 6 months, we can't do it anymore, right? So that's why we wanted to move slowly and do it the right way. So for anyone who wants to start their own range, think about that. Give yourself runway. Don't run out of money quickly, right? And that's something you got to keep in mind. And then, we also have a lot of funding opportunities that come from, like, we do have courses, right? And our K through 12 course, that's a interesting funding opportunity, right? And parents tend to love that opportunity. But we also have other funding mechanisms, right? Because like I said, we started off as for-profit, and we're now moving towards nonprofit. But so there's a lot of ways that we fund ourselves. So we don't really need funding, but we are looking at those type of innovation opportunities. So yeah, hopefully that answers that.
Cool being. So one last question for the sake of time.
Yeah.
Jaden mentioned the second question was, can you explain the difference between script kiddies and hackers?
Good question. I love this one. So, and semantics is something to keep in mind, right? So don't take this with a grain of salt. But a script kiddie, from a traditional sense, is someone who downloads a tool. Like there was a tool a few years ago called the low orbit ion cannon, I think, that Anonymous released. And it was literally a piece of software that you downloaded from the internet. You ran it like you run Spotify, and you click the button, and then it launched an attack. And several people went to jail for just downloading that and clicking the button. But a script kiddie is a person who pretty much downloads a tool, has no idea how it works, doesn't even care to learn, clicks a button or just runs some program, and they launch an attack. And you can actually take down several targets that way, right? But a script kiddie and a hacker, the difference is competency and knowing what the hell you're doing. Right? Yeah, but and the last thing I'll say is we're really proud of our K through 12 program, because, and a lot of the stuff, we just sponsor kids into it for free. But one of our core missions is to create the cyber warriors of tomorrow, not just of today, right? And so we like to get them young so that we can help train them, and they find it really fun. We have a lot of fun programs for kids, and we're really proud of that work, but we just don't market it a lot. But we will starting soon. And last thing I'll say is we just did some press recently on Fox Soul. If you Google Georgia Cyber Warfare Range and Fox Soul, or my name and Fox Soul, you'll see the interview. But we kind of talk a little deeper about what we're doing here, so it might be something worth watching for you guys. And overall, thanks for having us. Right? Like, I don't know, I hopefully this was helpful for you guys, and hopefully it didn't come off as a sales pitch, right? Because we're not selling you anything. Signing up is free, right? Using our stuff is free. So, hopefully you guys learned something. And if you ever need any help making your own range or anything at all in the cyberspace or development, engineering, just hit me up or hit anyone else on our team, and we'll start putting the bios of people on our site too. We're gonna revamp the site pretty soon. So yeah, and thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. You guys are doing awesome stuff at ICMCP, and hopefully this talk is the beginning of a fruitful relationship between us and you guys. So thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you, Jovonni, for being part of today's webinar. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Doing great things at the Cyber Range. And I think many of us were very intrigued and impressed. One thing I would ask, if you would provide a way, a means for our audience to communicate with you.
Okay. Yeah. Just My first name is actually spelled wrong on here, but I'm not a stickler for it. But it's Jovonni. And if you just Google Jovonni misspelled Pharr, you'll find me, right? But Jovonni on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, and the range is GACWR on all social media too. So you can find us there. We're pretty easy to find. So
sounds great. Thank you so much again. And it's right at the top of the hour. Thank you, Jovonni. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. Remember to please complete this survey to provide us with feedback. Also, please visit icmcp.org to learn more about membership benefits and upcoming events. One in particular, the Atlanta chapter is having the inaugural chapter meeting on June the 30th at 12 p.m. So please refer to our website to register and be there. You can also communicate with us on the ICMCP Slack channel. So again, thank you so much. And everyone remember to please stay safe and stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Be safe, everyone. Take care.